So yeah, well, it's great to be here. And as a co-organizer, thanks to everyone else for everyone for showing up, and thanks for your patience just now with me not knowing how to operate this thing. So I guess I can start. My talk is about the page forms extension, and let me share the slides here. Okay. Brian, can you just jump in and say if you can see this?
Yep, you're good.
Very good. Okay. So first of all, my name is Yaron Koren. I'm an Enterprise MediaWiki developer, entrepreneur, author, and podcaster. I have just a little plug for my consulting company, WikiWorks. We do MediaWiki consulting, wikiworks.com. So Page Forms is a MediaWiki extension that first released way back in 2007, which means it's almost 15 years old, which is pretty amazing. It's now version 5.2. Basically, it lets you define forms for creating, editing, and querying structured data within wiki pages. The querying is a little less important than the other two, but that's all. Those are the things it does. It's my first extension. It's still my most important extension. I didn't mention this, but it was known for a long time as semantic forms until 2016. I feel like Page Forms is where the development work, the future development work, really lies. This is, I'm wondering what other people think about this. This may be my most controversial slide. It feels to me like Semantic MediaWiki and Cargo seem to be more or less fully developed, and maybe that's true of a lot of the other Enterprise MediaWiki extensions. Obviously, there's always going to be maintenance work to do and bug fixes and so forth. I'm curious what other people think about that. But Page Forms definitely, if you just look at the feature list and the requests, feature requests, and all of that, the majority of them seem to be in Page Forms. Page Forms, as they say, Page Forms takes 90% of the development time, and everything else takes the other 90% of the development time. So yeah, so some current and future things happening with Page Forms. The first is the OOUI-ization of Page Forms. So yeah, OOUI is a JavaScript toolkit library created for use specifically within MediaWiki. In theory, you can use it anywhere, but I don't think it's used anywhere outside of MediaWiki. It stands for object-oriented. Well, it's based on OOJS, which is object-oriented JavaScript. So this is object-oriented. It's a dumb name, but actually the library is quite good. Here's just my listing of the advantages of OOUI. It took me a while to warm up to it, because the documentation is not that good. Well, I mean, it's fine. It could be better. I mean, it comes pre-installed in MediaWiki, which is really nice. It hopefully will not be discontinued for a long time, or if it is, will be replaced by something else. We'll see about that. But that's definitely my hope. This is a big thing, that it ensures consistency with the rest of the MediaWiki look and feel. You may have seen over the last few years on Wikipedia and just on other wikis that the special pages have changed. A lot of buttons have changed. All this kind of stuff. You can see it on the special search page quite easily on Wikipedia that things have changed. Good mobile support, good accessibility support. As you would expect, excellent internationalization support. some of the other, a lot of the other JavaScript UI libraries support whatever it is, 10, 20 languages, but obviously with MediaWiki, it's a whole other world. And it's pretty comprehensive functionality. So just briefly, here's a history I put together of how autocompletion has been implemented in page forms. These are all the different JavaScript libraries that have been used over time. Potentially this year, finally, everything will move on to OOUI. Oh, I didn't mention. I think OOUI started in 2013 or something. Even before that, it started out just for Visual Editor and then expanded for use in all of MediaWiki. So clearly, there's been a lot of change, and it could be that things will keep changing. We'll see. And the first 3 JavaScript libraries that were used are all unmaintained now. Interestingly enough. Yeah, okay, this was an unnecessary slide. Actually, OOUI's days are probably numbered too, sadly. My guess is in the next 3 to 8 years, it will be replaced by a well-known library called Vue.js. There's a blog post that sort of hints at that from a few months ago. They've already started creating competing equivalent widgets to some of the OOUI widgets in Vue. I'm hoping migration will be easy at that point. Once, obviously, it's going to take a long time for that to happen and for OOUI to get deprecated and all of that. But once it's time to move over, I'm hoping that migration will be easy. Here's a little demo. This is already some functionality in page forms that has changed over to OOUI. This is for form input. It's more or less the same. Actually, I think it looks nicer now than it used to. Yeah, so already it's being used for autocompletion, interestingly enough, in one case. The bottom of each form looks quite a bit nicer now that it's using OOUI. And now it again matches the standard form bottoms for MediaWiki. By the way, just a little side note. It used to be until very recently that when you created a form using one of the helper pages, it put in all these standard input tags at the bottom of the page. I've taken those out from the standard output. I would recommend removing them from your form definition so the layout will look nicer. It'll look basically like what's here at the bottom. Yeah, if you don't have any special customizations, that's what I'd recommend. So number 2, simplifying the syntax. I haven't put enough work, I think, into making templates and forms easier to create and easier to maintain. So now, just very recently, there's been enhancements to the syntax to allow for easier creation and maintenance of templates. Here's what probably a lot of you will recognize as the well, at least those who use Cargo will recognize the whole thing as a standard syntax for the tops of templates. So there's the sort of the before and after. I mean, the old one still works, but now you can call something called template params, which both defines the parameters for a template and also displays does the display of that whole text on the screen. And for the bottom of the template, the cargo store call also looks different. It now just sees what cargo declare is defining, and assuming the field names are the same, assuming the parameter names in the template are the same as the cargo field names, you don't need to manually specify each one. And then template display takes care of all the bottom, which is really nice. It in turn goes to template params and sees what are the fields or parameters associated with this template. Let me put them in a nice table. and you can see there's a special label for population if you want to have a label that's different from the parameter name. In this case, it's just pop. This takes care of that automatically because in template params, the label was specified. So put it all together and you can have a template that just looks like this. It's all parser functions basically. And this should hopefully make it easier to maintain a template, to add additional parameters or rename them, that kind of thing, without having to go through and do any wiki text editing, like adding new rows to the table, that sort of thing. Just a random question, if anyone is wondering about this: why is all of this in page forms? These things have nothing to do with forms, and that's for the same reason that there's all this existing functionality that handles templates, array map being the most obvious one, and the answer is just because it's easier to have them in page forms than putting them somewhere else. But it's a reasonable criticism, I suppose. And potentially all of this should get split off somewhere. Possible next step for forms is to have forms themselves use all this stuff. Now that a template can declare its parameters using that template params parser function, potentially a form can use that. So you don't need to have all these fields. And this is what I'm showing on the left-hand side is already a simplified version because it uses this display equals table thing. So yeah, potentially you could have just this single thing and it takes care of everything, getting all the fields and doing a nice display. That's only for very simple forms where you don't need to do any customization to any field, but still, that's there's certainly some percentage of forms where that's the case. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about is the prepackaging of data structures, which isn't really part of page forms, but it may potentially change the way people interact with page forms. It's a fairly new MediaWiki extension from about a year ago. You can find the link there. It lets you define what I call packages of wiki pages. Sort of like, well, there's package managers for Linux called apt and yum and that kind of thing, and it's maybe sort of like Git, less so. So you can use it for any kinds of pages, but a typical use case, I think, given that it hasn't gotten that much usage yet, is to have a whole data structure in a package, which is templates, forms, potentially Lua modules, potentially semantic MediaWiki properties. Package them all together and bundle them in a single data structure. Here's just a random screenshot of a test package that I created. So this is what it looks like on the screen if you have Page Exchange installed, and if you just click that install button, it's going to install those 5 pages on your wiki that all relate to the single data structure of books and authors. This one is cargo specific, but it can be anything. So yeah, in the future, maybe most wiki installations, templates, and forms will be elements of an outside package, or at least will start out that way, and then people can make their own customizations and so forth. And hopefully that'll be easy to do if you're using all of these helper functions like template params and all that. It could be just a matter of adding. If you want to add a new field, you may be able to just add it in one place as opposed to 5 or more places, which is what's required now. So that's sort of the holy grail. But anyway, it is quite nice, especially for people who haven't used any of the software before, to just start out with something, to just install something, have it work, and go from there, as opposed to starting with a blank page. You can potentially help with this if if you have your own data structures on your wiki, or you know, if you've you know, have thought about this kind of thing, many data structure packages could be created, basically, you know, encompassing all human knowledge, as they say. This could be a good topic for the Create Camp coming up. I want to give a plug to that. I want to give another plug for something called the Enterprise MediaWiki Hackathon, which is happening in just about a month. It's going to be in person in Dallas, Texas. I'm very excited about that. There's a few of us who are already signed up to go, but you can definitely consider going. And well, I mean, as with the Create Camp here, you can work on anything, but hopefully packages will be a big topic of discussion. And I think that's it. I can stop sharing now. Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
I think there's one coming. Okay, here we go. I'll read it to you, Yaron. Is there a feature to do branching logic to show a specific field or their drop-down content based on values on other fields? For example, if there is a yes/no question, if there is a yes/no field question, can another field hide or show it? If not, is this a possible future feature?
Yeah, there is. It's called show on select. I don't know if the person asking knows about that. There's that. There's also something called values dependent on, depending on what exactly you're doing. But if you're just talking about a checkbox, show on select works well for that.
Just give it 1 second. Any other questions filter in?
Yeah, I wanted to know, by the way, I've been adding OOUI to a bunch of other extensions too. It's great, and if anyone is an extension developer out there, it's really nice. It's a little hard to figure out the API, but it's not as bad as it looks. And once you get the hang of it, it just makes a nicer display, even for things like checkboxes or drop downs or something. Everything just looks a little nicer.
Another question: what's the easiest and prettiest way to have users upload images?
The easiest way is to use something called the simple upload functionality, which bypasses all the stuff with, you know, having to select the copyright and all of that. Yeah, I guess that's the answer. There's some setting you can do. Maybe it should be made field specific. Right now, you can either make everything simple upload on your wiki or nothing. But that's usually fine for people. Yeah, probably more people should be using that, because I think in a lot of wikis, all that stuff is just noise. All the, you know, setting the copyright and all of that. Or, you know, assigning a custom file name, all that kind of stuff. So simple upload, basically, you know, it's, I mean, it's as simple as you probably would imagine.